a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna want to get Shungla's picture. Rinpoche's
So
picture.
that's good.
Usually puts a big ring on Rinpoche. Is it okay?
That's all right. This
Yeah.
is contained though.
Yeah, let me move this over.
Let's put it up high.
I'll put it on Rinpoche's picture.
This is good.
Better?
Oh, the prayers.
You got the ring? Oh.
Darren, you look spit.
1 minute. Good evening. We'll start in about a minute.
How you doing?
Should I mention
May I,
Venerable?
may I request one?
Who are you?
Yeah, I'm just below.
I wanted to know was Mountain Station or not. They're running late. Isn't that where you got on?
Remember.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. All right, man. Kiloratil. Ah, setter. Good evening. This is the Tibet Center, Kunchap Tardu Ling, a Buddhist meditation study and meditation center located in New York City and northern New Jersey. And this is our twice weekly presentation of the Buddha Dharma. Specifically, normally we would do the Lamrim Chenma, or stages on the path to enlightenment. But tonight we're doing just a refreshment because we'll start back to the Lamrim next Tuesday night. So all the prayers that we say are on the Tibet Center website in the FAQ section. Scroll down to prayers. So we'll say a couple of prayers for the spreading of the teachings, the Heart Sutra, and take refuge in Bodhisattva vow, and then we'll start the class. By the force of the blessings of the non-fallacious three precious gems and of the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living here together with near ones who have engaged the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled. Excellent collection of favorable conditions increase, like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness. May they never be oppressed by masses of interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. The Heart Sutra. Thus have I heard once. The Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of the Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a big gathering of great monks and great bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi which examines the dharmas, called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, how should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge? And Avalokiteshvara answered, Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this, seeing the five skandhas and their natural emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness itself is form. Emptiness is not separate from form. Form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus, all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor their wearing out. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, They have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awaken to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for there is no deception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed, Tayat Om Gate Gate Parasam Gate Bodhisoha. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, profound transcendent knowledge should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering, and the world with its gods, humans, Asuras and Gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praised the words of the Blessed One. So refuge and bodhisattva vow, which we say 3 times, as you all know. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and to dispel the miseries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind intent on full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And the miseries of the world are why we're here, because it's our job to get rid of them. And as we know, all these problems are created at the core by minds. So minds that are not operating as they should. So, as you know, I always bring different things in. So again, and I always recommend books. So here I am, the book salesman again. This is His Holiness's latest volume 9 in the Wisdom and Compassion series. Appearing in Empty is the title of the book. His introduction, I thought, was really good. I read it several times. It really inspired me and took the edge off the events of the news. To hear someone with a clear mind addressing the whole panorama of what's going on now and the cause of the problems is very refreshing. And we're blessed to be alive when he is teaching and be around. But fortunate, whatever we did in the past, I don't know, but it was something good. So this is the introduction. You don't need the page. You just find the introduction. It's actually page 1. How exciting. We were received, this is His Holiness speaking now, not reading. We were received into this world at birth with kindness, and we continue to live and share with others due to kindness. But sometimes our anger and resentment obscure us from seeing the kindness around us, and that in turn may impair us from showing kindness. First hint, our anger obscures us from seeing the good. Get rid of the anger. That's the idea. So our attitude is the key factor. Once I visited a garden in Switzerland, and people were sitting on park benches scattering seeds and bits of bread for the birds. The birds flew there without having to be called. It shows that when you show kindness to others, even animals, they will automatically come. If you are fearful and suspicious and distance yourself from others, they refrain from approaching you and you will become isolated. This is very simple. We're not talking about the next life or anything else. Simple behavior that we can adjust, even if you have no religion. You'll become isolated. So an open, more compassionate attitude towards other sentient beings is helpful for both others and ourselves. It could be bad. He continues, wherever I go, I smile. So people are naturally friendly in return. Paying attention to others' well-being and having an altruistic mind is the best way to secure your own physical and mental health. Whether you believe in religion or not, being compassionate will benefit you. Whereas if you think just of yourself, you're miserable. Look around. Cultivating compassion is the best way to have a happy life. Bang. He continues. Our educational system needs to emphasize the commonalities of all beings. Each of us wants happiness and to avoid suffering, no matter what people look like, where they are from, their socioeconomic level, their age, or their health. We are all alike in this way. Emphasizing the differences among us breeds fear, anxiety, and suspicion. Bear that in mind. The difference, the result is fear, emphasizing difference, fear, anxiety, and suspicion. Those emotions and attitudes arise in our mind, but by changing how we look at others and how we interpret situations, we can release these disturbing emotions. The ball's in your court. In the Nalanda tradition, which I think most of you know, it's the Sanskrit tradition of northern India and Tibet. In Nalanda tradition, we emphasize reason and logic, and such analysis can help us cultivate compassion in meditation. Reason and analysis. He continues, one way to do this is to contemplate the disadvantages of the self-centered attitude. The disadvantages of the self-centered attitude. Self-centeredness, he says, makes us sensitive to small slights. We interpret everything, even the smallest glance or mumbled words, in terms of ourselves. Think of your behavior at work. A lot of time, okay? We become blind to the experiences of those around us, not recognizing that our indifference towards them leads to inequality in so many areas of life. A very big point to ponder. Coming from us, we're blocking the goodness of others, etc. He continues, when others believe their well-being is discounted, they become unhappy. And their unhappiness adversely influences us too. We're not in a vacuum. We're connected. Being around unhappy people, be they friends, enemies, or strangers, makes us unhappy too. It happens. He continues, therefore, I meditate on compassion and altruism, which are the opposite of self-preoccupation. When I wake up in the morning, I recite a verse from Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds by the 8th century Indian sage Shantideva. And it's the verse we repeat every time we gather. For as long as space endures, for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the world. That's the theme of the Tibet Center. In addition, this is very interesting now, I also investigate, where is the I? Where is the I? Am I my body or my mind? It's either or. There's no third factor. Okay? I'm not either of those. Even the Buddha wasn't his body, speech, or mind. So where is the Buddha? Where is the Buddha? This investigation leads us to conclude that the feeling of the solid I, something that is inherently and really me, has no basis. The I exists. Yes, it's merely designated by terms and concept, but we can't isolate exactly what it is separate from our bodies and minds. No pointing at reality. Thinking like this helps us to reduce the strong thought of self, which is the big troublemaker. He continues, people and other phenomena seem to be objective entities out there, as we've been discussing in the inside section of the Lamrim. There's objective reality, etc. Venerable Vreeland has gone over this for the last 3 months. So people and other phenomena, I'll repeat what he said, seem to be objective entities out there that are not related to our minds. They don't seem to depend on their causes or their parts. They're just there. That's it. They're there. But if we investigate and try to find what they really are, there's nothing there. It is all mental fabrication. Buddhist philosophy and quantum physics are similar in this regard. Nothing exists independent of our minds. The designating dependence. The designation comes from the mind. Because things appear to be objectively existent entity, they appear to be objectively existent entities, we grasp them to exist as such. Someone appears kind to us and we think they are an inherently existent friend. Another person says something we don't like, and we designate them as a disagreeable person and think they will always be like that. Well, pretty close sometimes. Seriously. All right. All the strangers around us don't influence one way or the other. So these are the three types of people the Venerable Vreeland talked about: the enemy, the friend, the neutral person. You know, this is this way, that's that. And you do a video and you examine your attitudes towards them. That's how we improve. A technique from the Lamrim. All the strangers around us don't influence in one way or the other, as we say, the neutral person. So we navigate our way around them and forget that they have feelings. If we can care less, that's it. But, he continues, if we investigate exactly who the friend or enemy is, we can't find them in their body, speech, and mind. Where's this pointing out, the real friend there? Really can't find them. They don't exist as self-enclosed permanent entities. Bodhisattva practice, His Holiness says, consists of cultivating wisdom, understanding the deeper mode of existence of people and phenomena, and method, the two things, generating bodhicitta and engaging in the bodhisattva practices. From the side of wisdom, nothing exists independent of other factors. Exists, but not independent of other factors. Says as its causes, parts, and the mind that conceives and designates them. Try to remember that. It's key. From the method side, compassion and altruism are the basis for virtuous actions. Wisdom and method are my main practices. If you think of these two upon awakening every day, it shapes your mind and influences how you see and experience situations the entire day. So we should entertain this thought and try to train ourselves. 2 seconds. How long does it take? You can, these two things, set the whole day up with that motivation. His Holiness continues. Every day I read a portion of a text by one of the great scholar adepts. Nagarjuna's writings are exceptional, and those of his indirect disciple Chandrakirti are bold. Vasubandhu, Dignaga, and others are afraid to think everything is mentally designated. It appears that way anyway. They fear that nothing could be pinned down if that were the case. And they have to have something pinned down. So they rejected that belief. We can have more about this later, but we'll let him continue. I feel fortunate because the idea that everything exists by me being merely designated, not by having some inherent essence, is firm in my mind. He's very happy about this. He's rejoicing in this. I feel like a close disciple of Chandrakirti, and every day I read his supplement to the Treatise of the Middle Way and its auto commentary. That's Madhyamaka Vatara and Madhyamaka Baisha, something like that. These are in English, by the way, now, so you want to look them up. He continues, the two bodhisattva practices of method and wisdom combined are very powerful. We should practice these ourselves and share them with others. The biggest gift. If you just study and discuss the teachings but don't practice them, you become a hypocrite. Oh boy. Instead, you should be a good example for others. That is the proper way to serve sentient beings. If your speech and your actions aren't in accord, how can others trust you? Trust is the basis of harmonious and beneficial relationships. I've heard that some psychologists say that our compassion fades as we get older and are exposed to more and more tragedy. What do they call that? Compassion burnout or something? There's some term they're using lately. I think that if we just rely on what a feeling or mood of discouragement arises in our minds, that could happen. A very key point now. What is moods that arise in there? You follow them like a caboose. Oh, who's in charge here? I don't know. Would that I could do this all the time, I think if we just rely on what I feel, okay. But if we investigate our feelings and moods, our compassion can be sustained and enhanced. If you feel discouraged, investigate. What are the causes of this way of thinking? What are its effects? You can change your thoughts and feelings by investigating which thoughts and feelings are more realistic and more beneficial and familiarizing yourselves with them. It's natural. You see the benefit, you're jumping on it, okay? So he continues on page 4. We're up to that. Although single-pointed concentration, samadhi, is valuable, it's not the only quality to develop in our Dharma practice. Analytical meditation is essential because it cuts down all our justifications and excuses that support our self-centered attitude. Tattoo this in your brain. Analytical meditation is essential because it cuts down all our justifications and excuses that support our self-centered attitude. We can't find one logical reason to cherish ourselves more than others and to ignore the well-being of others. All the emotions that bring us problems have no logical basis. Contemplation of dependent arising and emptiness destroys the ignorance that is the basis of selfishness. Selfishness equals ignorance, causes selfishness. Try the little things to remember. There's so much here in a short, terse way. When I first became interested in science and began to learn about it, some people warned me not to get too close to sciences because my faith in the Buddha would decrease. They're talking to the Dalai Lama, they forgot. But I use logic and reasoning to discern what is true and what to believe. Maybe I'm half Buddhist monk and half scientist. Both Buddhists and scientists seek truth. So we can learn from scientists, and scientists can learn from us Buddhists. With a deeper understanding of reality, we can then use our human intelligence to solve problems. Just wishing that our problems would disappear doesn't make that happen. And we all know this because we tried it. I wish this. Yeah, you keep wishing. You wish you won the lotto too. You didn't. We created the problems, so we must develop our knowledge and ability to solve them. The Buddha himself told us not to accept statements with blind faith, but to investigate. We should not sit back and say, oh, my Lama said that, so it must be true. I sometimes read the teachings of some Tibetan Lamas, but when I think about what was written or spoken, I cannot accept it. So he's discerning, even when it's a Lama's writing, it must be discernment. The Buddha taught according to the two truths, ultimate and conventional, or quote, veiled. Understanding the ultimate truth is the direct opposite of following ignorance. Cultivating non-attachment, ethical conduct, and altruism enables us to relate properly to the conventional world. My meditation practices is based on these two truths. Hiku Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama at Tek-Chen Choling. We're so lucky to be in the world with him. Who talks like this? Well, I'll tell you who talks. We'll read a little poem for a little lightness of mood from one of my favorite guys. I hang out with him constantly. I wish I could. Well, he's this 7th Dalai Lama, Losang Khaesang Gyatso, who wrote this wonderful book, Songs of Spiritual Change. It goes through like 5 different topics. This book is almost as old as me. It's real cheap, so it must be very old. I think it was like $7. What book is $7? Anyway, this is a quick poem called Song for a Friend. A song for a friend that is on page 99. I think the new versions also paginate the same way. I have one at home, a red cover instead. This was translated by Glenn Mullen, His Eminence. His funniness or whatever, I don't know. His silliness, Glenn Mullen, great guy. Song for a Friend. Homage to Buddha Vajradhara, creator of all mandalas, who trains living beings in this age by manifesting as a guru radiant as a new moon to bestow everlasting joy. Again, always like Milarepa's poems, the guru, the guru. From the tongues of the gurus, the real prophets, the gently smiling masters come. The purifying teachings of Buddha. Take up this rosary strung from their words, which show how to be happy in every situation. He's referring to his poem as a rosary. If we use this life born of 100 virtues for nothing but material purposes, in truth, we're no better than animals. who also sense not higher values. This is my heartfelt advice to you. So don't be like, if you're always thinking, eating, sleeping, etc., that's what the animals do. And they do it better than we do. They know how to make themselves comfortable. At least my cats do. And this one does too. Look at it. Yeah. When thought is powered, the next verse, when thought is powered by delusion, every move of body, speech, and mind is negative, strictly speaking. Rely upon spiritual alertness, or the depths of your heart will corrode. Life ends in certain death, and that death could befall you today. This is not fantasy. What can the 8 worldly dharmas do? Keep the mind in a realistic space. Next verse. No matter what possessions we may have, not one of them can help us forever. And at present they bring just worry and work. Satisfy the mind with things of the mind. These things are all meditation. So you could take this thing and spend an afternoon with it, walking around thinking about it. It's wonderful. Next verse. The friends and relatives surrounding us can be disturbing sources of anxiety and frustration. The smallest cause can end your life. Look to the affairs deeper than worldly friendships. Next verse. Squandering the day in ceaseless talk and blanketing the night in clouds of sleep, mind rests in Dharma for merely a minute, barely a minute. Watch yourself closely and honestly. That's a big point. You have to be honest with ourselves. And watching the string of thoughts going through, what's good, what's bad, and seeing what's really there. Because otherwise, built-in, what's the word? What do they call it? PR department. So that's not so bad. This is this. We tend to emphasize, well, I'm not a good person. I mean, maybe not, You only know if you analyze. So the next verse, he said, watch yourself closely and honestly. So in the next verse, he says, if the objects that you acquire bind your mind in chains of attachment, they ruin both this life and the hereafter. Do not be attracted to that which only harms. From beginningless time, the blind passions that have constantly shadowed after the mind. If you do not check them with spiritual forces, your practice is only a show for others. The spiritual teacher who shows the great way, when approached, fulfills everyone's every wish. He's over here. Do not be repulsed by ostensible faults. Develop perfect trust and confidence in him. Constantly visualize the Guru on your head and the circle of truth at your heart, a practice always infallibly effective in completely and thoroughly transforming the mind in this life, the bardo, and thereafter. So if you're not good at visualizing, just think of what your Guru said, your teacher said, His Holiness, he's everyone's Guru. It's simple enough. I mean, some people are not good. I can't picture them in my head, and that's not important. The qualities of their being is important, and we want to incorporate them. The joy and sadness seen in the people of this world are products of their own white and black actions. With utter precision, guard the practice of cultivating good and uprooting evil within yourself. Next verse, probably 4 more. If you consider as kind the mother who carried you in her womb, how can you dislike any being? In countless past lives, all have been a mother to us. You can understand that. That's the truth. Since the beginning, are all things void or empty, whatever word you pick. Yet we grasp at reality in pictures drawn merely by our own intellect. And thus we make the world into a pit of sorrow. Cut out false projections, the root of delusion. And there's 4 lines of the insight section. Hey, what a powerful poem. In brief, since the seed of all things, happiness and suffering, good and evil, is the mind itself, tame the mind with mindfulness and steady alertness. By thus pouring the juice of core instructions into the stomach of an avid practitioner, may the seed of happiness in this and future lives be thus firmly and irrevocably planted. Always refreshing. When you don't feel good, you're depressed, and then you read some of these things. There's something short you can grab, or if you're really a hero, you can get some thick intellectual. You could read Chandrakirti like His Holiness, but it does change the whole temperature in your mind, the whole outlook. These books are magic. They're not written out of desire for their own aggrandizement or anything, or movie deals or whatever people do nowadays. They're written from the heart. So we'll move into a more scientific mode right now. Well, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll go to, I'm going to go to His Holiness's Meditation on the Conventional Nature of Mind. That's chapter 4 of this Gilug tradition of Mahamudra. This book was published in 2002. I think the lecture was done in the past century, 99 or so. It's well translated by Alex Berzin, but you have to get used to certain terms. If you hear safe direction, think refuge. You have to have an advertising campaign for this. And positive potential is merit, things like that. So you have to be a little nimble in your mind when you hear these words, because we're not used to those. This is about preliminaries for shamatha meditation, and we can do this quickly here. And he said, he quotes the text of the two main techniques of the sutra. The text, by the way, is written by the first Panchen Lama Zang Chuki Jaltsen, or Chuchi. I have a trouble with that. And His Holiness is commentating on that text. Okay. So the root text says, of the two main techniques of the sutra tradition of Mahamudra, don't mind Mahamudra now, these are just general Buddhist techniques we're talking about, namely seeking to meditate on mind on top of having gained a correct view of reality and seeking a correct view on top of having meditated on mind. I shall explain here in accordance with the latter technique. So, all phenomena are devoid of true inherent existence. This is His Holiness talking now. To gain a decisive understanding of this and then to focus single-pointedly on this understanding is the tradition of first understanding the view, then meditating on it. Analyzing, understanding, then meditating. The second tradition, on the other hand, is to focus single-pointedly on mind first and then gain a decisive understanding of the correct view on this basis. This is the tradition of Mahamudra that the first Panchen Lama now explains. The text continues. On a seat conducive for mental stability, assume the sevenfold bodily posture and clear yourself purely with a round of 9 tastes of breath. This cushion, His Holiness will explain what this means. He's saying on a seat or cushion that is slightly raised in the back, sit with your back perfectly straight. Very important, the straight back. You might sit in a chair, fine, but the back has to be straight. In either full Vajra, half Vajra, or the ordinary cross-legged position, whichever you can, and begin by clearing your mind with a round of 9 tastes of breath. Very simple. This is not phase breathing or this or that, or you might have heard of, which I don't know much about. Breathe slowly and evenly, calming yourself down. First in the right nostril and out the left 3 times. Then reverse the order of the nostrils for the next 3 rounds, and finally in and out both nostrils simultaneously for the last 3 rounds. So it's 9 rounds of breath. Very simple. You don't have to do this or do that. And the breath sort of calms down the mind. The physical is working on the mental. So His Holiness now comments a very nice passage here. Very interesting. Because we often feel compelling attractions and aversions, as well as oppressive confusion. Sounds familiar to me. We have a great need to practice these 9 rounds of breathing. Very simple. We must quiet our mind of longing, angry and confused thoughts that take strong interest in and fixate respectively on pleasurable objects that we find desirable, displeasing ones that we find undesirable, and any object that we find confusing. By shifting the focus of our attention to our breath through these 9 rounds, we temporarily stop all extraneous disturbing thought and thus achieve an unspecified or neutral state of mind. It's very simple. And guess what? In 2 seconds, we're going to try it. We try to stay for a reasonably long time in this neutral state. So you develop this, you calm yourself down, and sit with that neutral state. You'll be surprised if the practice day after day, continuously practicing, or as Rabbi Shea used to say, do continuous. Very important, the continuity. You'll have the ability to slightly start to alter your moods. So you're not a slave to your moods. We try to stay for a reasonably long time in this neutral state, temporarily free from attraction to certain objects, aversion from others, and confusion about yet others. So for like, well, it'll take us less than a minute. 1, 2, 3, we'll start. 3 in the right, out the left. 3 in the left, out the right. 3 in and out. That's it. Simple. Begin. Sit in a neutral state for a few seconds. So bear that in mind. Advice from His Holiness. It's like oxygen to us these days, his words. So, and he continues, as this is a meditation on mind, we need both a clear state of mind upon which to focus and a clear state of mind that does the focusing. Therefore, we must first make the mind as clear as possible with such preliminary methods as these 9 rounds of breathing in order to make it most suitable for the task, prepping the site, whatever you want to call it. Then, as there is a great need to build a positive potential, read merit, there it is, for gaining success in our practice, we next generate this neutral state of mind into a positive one. The root text says, thoroughly cleanse your state of awareness, and then, with a purely positive mind, direct toward your practice your taking of refuge and the reaffirmation of your dedicated heart of bodhicitta. It's like a little meditation session you do by yourself. Just listen to it, and if you like the advice, follow it. By thinking about the precious human life, impermanence, death, the suffering of the worst states of rebirth, and so forth, we turn our mind to the Dharma, which endures. The others, nothing else endures. But on this basis, we then reaffirm the safe direction or refuge we are putting in our life by taking refuge once more, and re-enhance our motivation by rededicating ourselves with bodhicitta. That's our motivation. We direct the energy of the positive state of mind that we generate in this way towards building up the positive potential or merit that will contribute to future success in our Mahamudra practice. We're building up our store. We're directing our future. The text continues. Meditate next on the profound path of Guru Yoga. Now, some of us have that, some don't. His Holiness says, as a preliminary Guru Yoga for this tradition of Mahamudra, we practice either the 100 deities of Tushita or any other appropriate form of Guru Yoga. The Gaden Laja, some people say Gaden Lajema. So the text continues, the root text. And after making hundreds of very strong, fervent requests, dissolve your visualized Guru into yourself, absorb for a while unwaveringly in this state, which all haphazard appearance-making and appearances have been contracted until they have disappeared, withdrawn, contracted, until they've disappeared. Do not contrive anything with thoughts such as expectations or worries. There's a big key right there. We may not be able to visualize Guru and all this, but how much time do we spend corrupting our mind with expectation and worries? It might happen, it might not. But, these are all projections. Things that we worry about may never happen. My mother was a worry. She'd hope for the worst and be very upset when it didn't happen. I mean, it's not good. Making sincere requests for inspiration to our Guru with great faith and then dissolving into ourselves whatever visualized form we have been imagining to represent him or her produces the state of the mind that is most conducive for beginning the Mahamudra practice of focusing on mind itself. Now, we may not be doing Mahamudra practice, but we're doing practices that follow the instructions of our Guru. So you take it that way. This is because such preliminary practice requires the mind, renders the mind, rather, such preliminary practices. Why do we do it? It renders the mind blissful and energizes it so that it apprehends its object with great strength of brilliance. So your motivation does affect the brilliance of your visualization or the sharpness of your thinking. Seems to be. It seems to be what he's saying. That's my interpretation. I don't know. You form your own. In such a state, we try to remove anything artificial, such as conceptual thoughts. Hard to do. Any conceptual thought is deceptive and disturbs our state of mind, causing it to waver. Thus, we try not to think of any thoughts at all, particularly those that hope for success in attaining something through this practice, or that fear or worry about possible failure has no place here. Okay? We try not to let any such thoughts that have already arisen continue, and not to let any such thoughts newly arise. In this way, we focus our mind single-pointedly on an unwavering, vivid state. I'll cut to a few quick things. I won't read the whole text because we're starting to run out of time a little. When we look superficially and quickly, now they're talking about Mahamudra, but it's practice in general. I don't, know anything about Mahamudra except what I read in this book. But it's a lot of hints on general practice. Holiness is so skillful. Really. When we look superficially and quickly at the Mahamudra practice of mind focusing on mind focusing on mind, now think of this. We are reminded of Shantideva's argument in engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds. The guiding light of the world has said, this is his quote, mind can't see mind. It's like the edge of a sword being able to cut itself. How could it? This is a problem we have. They're telling you, watch the mind with the mind, but then we hear on the other side, well, you can't. It's like the edge of a sword cutting itself. He will now resolve that conflict. This is beautiful. But here we are speaking in a totally different context, one in which Shantideva's analogy of the mind to a sword does not pertain. Context, ladies and gentlemen. We are not speaking of a separate, truly and inherently existent faculty, reflective awareness. Sometimes they call that wrong rig, I think, reflective awareness, with which we are focusing on a truly and inherently existent mind. Hold on. Remember reality. Since neither of them exists at all, mind conceived as existing in an impossible manner cannot focus on itself. Rather, in Mahamudra meditation, we use either a later moment of consciousness to focus on the remembered experience of a preceding moment of mind, or one part of the consciousness to focus on another, with both possibilities carried out within the context of understanding that consciousness or mind has a nature of being totally devoid of true inherent existence. Very tricky. You have to think about this a lot. Ask questions from high lamas and stuff, good teachers. This is a big point. Yeah. We can understand this by analogy. When we focus on ourselves, we make a conventional, though not an absolute difference in our mind between the me that is focused upon and the me that is focusing on it. Yeah, and it's somewhat of a, we're able to do it. So why get complicated? Likewise, when mind focuses on mind, we have either one portion or a later moment of consciousness aimed at another portion or a former moment of consciousness, differentiated conventionally, though not absolutely, as its object of mindful focus. Differentiated conventionally, though not absolutely, as its object of mindful focus. In this way, we experience a focusing mind single-pointedly secured to a mind upon which it is focusing. So that's how it works. Don't worry about it too much, but it bears some thinking. It's kind of complicated. So how much time? We got a few minutes. So take a break. Take 9 breaths. Get out of here. No, it's a handy technique. And when His Holiness recommends something, it comes from the highest good for all of us. Not thinking of himself, and he proves it. So here we go. This is a big favorite of everyone here, right? Bob's favorite. Quantum and the Lotus.
Oh,
Written 23 years ago in French, beautifully translated into English. It's a dialogue between Maître Ricard and the astrophysicist Juan Tu. I think his name is Juan Tuan. About science. This particular one is called The Virtual Frontier, and it's discussing the mind and body duality. Mind-body duality. What exactly is consciousness, and where does it come from? It's a little tight and thick, but it's good to hear these things. Did this ineffable phenomenon arise naturally through the process of evolution once brains became sufficiently complex? That's scientific materialism's view. Or has consciousness coexisted with the material universe since beginningless time? Does the idea of a division between the mind and the body make any sense? If consciousness can exist apart from a body, does this perhaps explain accounts of reincarnation? Questions raised. The astrophysicist first Tuan, I'll call him. No. He says most biologists believe that in the process of evolution, consciousness arose when the networks of brain cells in living beings reach the threshold of complexity. And then you have thinking. This theory implies that consciousness emerged, just as life itself, from inanimate matter. Does Buddhism agree with this view? And Mathieu Ricard, the Venerable Mathieu Ricard, he's a monk. Buddhism agrees with most of the opinions of science concerning the universe's evolution, except, of course, for the notion of, quote, a beginning. But it disagrees about the origin of consciousness. There is a fundamental quality of mind that is present at all times, the basic quality of knowing or being aware. Without this cognitive quality, one cannot speak of a mind or a consciousness. It is the mere fact of knowing that differentiates a conscious phenomenon from an unconscious one, like a stone. The rocks are not thinking these days. I'm sure there's an opinion out there that they are thinking, but in Buddhist terms, it is said that consciousness possesses a fundamental clarity of luminosity, opposite to the cognitive darkness of inanimate objects. Venerable Ricard continues, recount. This basic awareness of consciousness is a primary phenomenon. Matter is usually considered to be a primary phenomenon, meaning that we can explain how matter works and transforms itself and analyze it in terms of particles or energy, either way, but its mere existence is a given fact of the phenomenal world. It's there. Thank you. In the same way, from an experiential perspective, the first person experience, very careful, because the only way you can look, first person view of the mind is all that's valid. Consciousness can be considered as a primary phenomenon. It is needed for the arising of any thought, remains as the basis of every thought, and goes through the mind, and remains after a particular thought has vanished. You could see this. Sit there, watch your thoughts come in, they go out. Where do they go? On the shelf? Think this way. It's there. Underneath it all is awareness and knowing. It is the most fundamental aspect or nature of mind. Pure consciousness knows itself, but not in a subject-object relationship. I'm just talking about some of these things. It is self-illuminating, like the flame of a lamp that illuminates other objects, but does not need to illuminate itself, for light is its very nature. A nice thought to carry around with you. We can investigate our fleeting thoughts and find various causes that trigger them. But as to consciousness itself, the underlying basis of the thought, we can simply acknowledge its presence and understand that the present instant of consciousness has been triggered by a former instant of consciousness. Big topic in Buddhism. We cannot, however, find introspectively a more fundamental cause to consciousness. We may study consciousness from many outer viewpoints, such as the study of the brain and of behavior, but we have to acknowledge that the primary nature of consciousness belongs to the realm of our experience, not to the third person's perspective. Takes a little thinking, but so if you're fortunate enough to have the book, you read it a few times, it starts to make sense. At least I have to read it several times. Anyway, Buddhism distinguishes 3 levels of consciousness in general. I mean, it gets more fine point, but gross, subtle, and extremely subtle. The first of these is the level of the biochemical workings of the brain. The second is the subjective experience that we customarily call consciousness. That is to say, the mind's faculty to, among other things, examine itself, to ponder its own nature, and exercise freedom of choice. The third level, that of extremely subtle, which is the most important, is called the fundamental luminosity of the mind. It is a state of pure awareness that transcends the perception of a subject-object duality. This is very heavy, but just hear it, let it roll over you. In the world, it transcends the perception of a subject-object duality in the world and breaks free from the constraints and traps of discursive thought. These 3 types are not separated streams of consciousness, but lie at different, increasingly deep levels. The gross and subtle levels both arise from the fundamental level, as opposed to the other way around, as might be expected. The brain, so in other words, the most fundamental level engenders the subtle and the gross. The brain, and in fact the whole body, even extending outside the body to the environment, provide gross and subtle consciousnesses with the conditions that allow them to manifest themselves. These levels of consciousness are both shaped and modified by the brain and environment, and can in turn modify the brain and body. The activities of these levels of consciousness are related to the brain, and they can't manifest themselves without a body. So those grosser levels need a body. But the subtle level travels, finds another body when you die, does this, does that. Fundamental consciousness is quite different. In the Tantras, Buddhism's profoundest vision, fundamental consciousness is called pure awareness. Rigpa, that's an enigma, that pure awareness, sometimes clear light, whatever. This type of consciousness is always present behind the screen of thoughts. Nice phrase. It allows all thoughts to arise, but can be experienced in the absence of all mental constructs. It is also called the primordial continuity of the mind, natural luminosity, the ultimate nature of mind, the natural state of consciousness, essential simplicity, primordial purity, and spontaneous presence. Whatever you could find at the thesaurus. But some of the words are very enigma, like primordial this or that. But all the other sects have the equivalent. In normal life, only the gross and subtle level of consciousness can be discerned, because the fundamental level has been cloaked by the veil of ignorance. It's there, we have it, but it's cloaked by, quote, the veil of ignorance, however you want to characterize it. Just as the sun can be momentarily covered by clouds. However, even ignorance can no more affect the primordial nature of consciousness than clouds can affect the sun. That's an easy way to think of it. That's friendly, nice. So the scientist says, wait, but where do consciousness phenomena come from? Do we need a spark to settle life and consciousness in inanimate atoms? Where does it come from? He thinks like a scientist. Good for him. This spark, Matthew Ricard replies, idea creates a major problem. According to this conception, consciousness had a beginning. If so, either it was created ex nihilo, out of nothing, ex nihilo, without a cause, or by a creator. And we've already seen how Buddhism refutes these two ideas. Or it gradually came to life in inanimate matter, as most biologists and physicists think. One of them, the physicist Brian Greene, wrote the following letter to me. I think that consciousness is a reflection of microphysical processes of great and stupendous speed and complexity, although the qualitative features of consciousness differ dramatically from the perspectives of the physical constituents in which it is based. I do not think that this points towards there being something else than the physical structure. Unfortunately, he's wrong, but let him have his fun. Buddhism would answer that cause and effect must have a common nature. When the cause is substantially responsible for the effect. When the cause is simply a cooperative condition of the effect, as described below, the two might be quite dissimilar. Yes. Think of clay and pot. The cause of the pot is the clay, the fundamental cause, similar in nature. The things that help a pot be made, those electricity for the wheel, all that, is not similar to the resultant product, but it's a contributing factor. The human being with his hands, all that, or her hands. We got to be careful. A moment of consciousness can only be caused by a preceding moment of consciousness. Take this to the bank. This is basic Buddhism. Nom de manteca. Nuble pop. Don't forget. If something could be born from something utterly different, then anything could be born from anything else. Thus, the fundamental level of consciousness cannot have arisen from inanimate matter, and it doesn't necessarily always and in all contexts depend on being embodied in a physical form. So, we got a little minute. Dalai Lama explains this idea as follows. And he's talking to the current Dalai, about the current Dalai. His Holiness says, it is clear that consciousness depends on the functioning of the brain. So there is a causal relation between brain function and the arising of gross consciousness. But here is a question I continue to consider. What type of causal connection is it? In Buddhism, we speak of two types of causes. The first is a substantial cause, in which the stuff of the cause actually transforms into the stuff of the effect, think clay and pot. The second is a cooperative condition, in which one event takes place as a result of a preceding event, but there's no transformation of the former into the latter. Let's apply this to the causal origination of consciousness and its relationship to brain function. What type of causality exists there? We have experientially two types of phenomena that seem to be qualitatively distinct: physical and mental phenomena. Physical phenomena seem to have a location in space, and they lend themselves to quantitative measurement, as well as having other qualities, weight, all these things, color, shape sometimes. Mental phenomena, in contrast, do not evidently have a location in space, nor do they lend themselves to quantitative measurement, for they are of the nature of simple experience. Different metrics have to be employed. But we think everything physically. Over here, my mind's there. So it seems that we are dealing with two very different types of phenomena. In this case, if a physical phenomena were to act as a substantial cause for a mental phenomena, there would seem to be a certain lack of accord between the two. So he's saying physical things are not of the same nature as mental things. So we'll leave it at that, because a lot of this kind of thick, but it shows you the depth of Buddhism, the depth of thinking. Very modern. So there's something in the Buddhist practice, if you're new, for everybody, whatever you're bent. So next class we'll resume with the Lamrim, but we always have a portion of general Buddhism and techniques and advice for people who may not be familiar with the practices. The beginners, in other words, like I was a long time ago. No names. So we conveniently have all these wars going on. We could pray for all those people. Isn't that nice? So please do your best to mentally send out positive thoughts around you. These things, our minds have effects. The Sutra of the Recollection of Noble Three Jewels on the website in the FAQ section. I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, Bhagavata, Tathagata, Arahat, Samyak Sang Buddha, the learned and virtuous one, the Sugata, the knower of the world, the charioteer and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of devas and humans is the Buddha Bhagavat. The Tathagata is in accord with all merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasures of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major marks. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him, he is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those who long with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strengths cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He has completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from extreme torment. He is liberated from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats, who rise in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. The holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma, which is taught by the Bhagavat, is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Jnana, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously, worthy of veneration with joined palms. They are worthy of receiving prostration. They are a field of glorious merit. They are completely capable of receiving all gifts. They are an object of generosity. They are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, I prostrate to the Tathagata, pure the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha, the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma, the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha, the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. So concludes today's presentation. Our next class or presentation will be Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock here at the parsonage in South Orange. The goddess White Tara, or Buddha White Tara, sadhana that we've been doing for years, 40 years. All are welcome. It's at 1 o'clock, and refreshments, including espresso, will be served. The next Dharma class will be November the 7th, Tuesday night at 7 o'clock in New York City at the University Settlement House. Check our website. It's 273 Bowery, corner of Houston or Houston, if you're from Texas, I don't know. And the class after that will be right here again, the 8th of November at 7 o'clock. I want to thank Venerable Reeland for writing the ship of the Tibet Center. He's carrying Trungpa Rinpoche's legacy and doing it well. I wish him the best on his trip. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for everything. Big love to you all.